Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. I hope you're all excellent. If you have questions for next week's Q&A video, as always, get them in the comments below. If you would like to support the channel directly, you can click on the link to my Patreon and become a patron. If you prefer to digest some hard rock music, you can also find a link to my band Ragdoll's entire back catalog on our Bandcamp page. That is also linked in the video description. Let's get straight into the questions. Question number one, as with every week, relates to the guitar that I'm playing in this video. Have I ever built a guitar myself? I've talked about my dad in the past who has built many guitars over his time, and I got pretty into it, I want to say, when I was about 17 or 18, and that's when I built this. This, as you can see, is essentially a like Les Paul Junior, Les Paul Special clone, one-piece mahogany body with a gunstock oil finish. There's a Duncan P-rails with a triple shot switching ring in the bridge position, which is the only pickup in there. There's a Leo Kwan badass bridge. There's a single volume control. The neck is... how many pieces is the neck? Technically 5, but that's because there's little wings on the side there. There is a center stripe of, I forget the material there, but something tells me that is not mahogany, whereas the rest of the neck is mahogany. It might be a piece of walnut or something like that. I forget. Ebony board, ebony headstock veneer. There's a trophy inlay that my dad did. I definitely didn't do the inlay or the binding on this guitar, so I say I built this, but really all I did was kind of shape the neck, shape the body, which is the easiest thing on here. One thing that I'm pretty proud of is normally on a Les Paul Junior or Special on a Gibson, they have like a protruding bit kind of just here. Whereas I really like Hamer guitars, how they flush that out. So that is flush and the neck perfectly blends in there. And it sounds pretty beefy. I don't play this guitar anywhere near enough, but I really like the P90 mode on this P-rails pickup. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm also a moron who doesn't know how to wire anything properly, and I wired the volume control backwards, but that's not the worst thing ever. So yeah, this was like the peak of my guitar building. I don't want to say prowess because I really just kind of shaped a few simple curves on it, but it's a pretty solid guitar and I really like the way it sounds. So this is right around the time I got pretty intensely into my university degree, and I just haven't kind of picked it up with the building stuff since then. So this is the one remnant to that. There's a bunch of Strat style guitars that I assembled, but in terms of actually like putting in the hard yards and, you know, doing some woodwork and doing some finishing, this guitar is the one. So I'll keep playing it for the majority of the video. I posted a little photo on my YouTube community page during the week of the Ragdoll 2012 tour, or tour as some people noted. I always love a bit of internet snark there. We did about, I think it was 9 or 10 shows, and I'll tell you a little bit about that particular tour and the story because there were a few questions related to that. I will do a standalone video about this. I have put up some footage of one of the festival performances that we did there. You can find that on my channel, Ragdoll at Rocklahoma 2012. It's a pretty interesting little document because it was literally our first show outside of Western Australia. We hadn't even played on the East Coast before, and then there we are in the middle of Oklahoma playing a gig. So the way that came about was the promoter for the side stage had heard our first EP and really liked the song Foot to the Floor, and he had sent us an email and said, really like what you guys are doing. I booked the side stage of this festival. If you ever want to come to the US, let me know. And I just wrote back and said, we'd love to come to the US. When can we do it? And he said, cool, I'm going to put you on the bill for this year's festival. See you there. And that was it. So we were all like, yeah, whatever. You know, this is so not going to happen. And literally 2 days later, the festival poster came out and our name was on there. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. The festival was in March, and this was like the start of February. Maybe the middle of February. I remember because we were in Kalgoorlie doing a gig. So we kind of flipped out, and what we managed to pull together over the next 3 months was, we had some friends of friends who helped us book a few little club shows around that to turn it from just a single festival show into, a tour or a tour. Keep in mind, we had never really done anything more than like 3 or 4 days away from home at this stage, and we ended up spending, well, I was in the US for 6 weeks. So that was kind of mind blowing for a 22, 23 year old. And then, yeah, so we put these kind of sideshows together, and we managed to record an EP basically from scratch. We wrote a bunch of songs, recorded them. Huge shout out to friend of the channel, Troy Nababan, because that's where we really began our recording odyssey together. That was so much fun, so much hard work, but so much fun recording that entire EP, which became the EP here today. And yeah, then the next thing I know, it's Memorial Day in the States, and I'm standing in a field in Pryor, Oklahoma, just total culture shock. And we had such an amazing, ripping time there. There was a lot of challenges there because we were so green and because we had never toured before, and it was a whole new country, and we were just indulging in many, many ways. What I mean by that is, like, I had a milkshake every day and I had lots of candy, and I didn't I didn't come away from that one feeling too good because I just kind of went mental. I could have done something interesting with my life, like taken a bunch of drugs and drank a bunch of beer, but I don't do either of those things. I just eat candy. So yeah, we had a pretty wicked time. There was a show that we did in Houston where we drove all the way from Oklahoma City down to Houston, and the guy at the venue like looked like he'd just woken up. He opened the door. He was like, "There's no show on tonight." So that was the major bummer of the tour. I remember doing a show at JJ's in Denton where we played to two people in the basement of a pizza parlor, but at least we got to eat some pizza. And then it felt like from that kind of real dive where we had a cancelled show and a really crummy show, everything picked up because we had another cancelled show, and then we ended up picking up a show at the Rail Club in Fort Worth in Dallas, which was awesome fun. I remember that was Cam's birthday, and we had an epic time there. And the rest of it just kind of picked up, and we kind of finished the tour really strongly, and it kind of gave us the impetus going forward. And in 2013, we spent 10 weeks in the States and we did 30 shows. So that was far more of a tour. I really just need to do videos talking about this stuff because I'm on question 2 in my Q&A. But if you want to see like an in-depth video just talking about my experiences, sleeping on floors and driving around the Midwest of the US with my buddies, let me know. That would probably make a pretty funny little video, especially if I can drag Ryan and Cam in to talk about that as well. We can maybe do some reminiscing about that. All right. Question number 3. Do I like Vegemite? Yes, Vegemite is glorious. It is part of my diet. It's an absolute staple. But every time an American or a European tries Vegemite, in my opinion, they do it wrong, because what you got to do is this. You get a piece of toast and you put a bunch of butter on it, and then you put a little bit of Vegemite. That's how I like to enjoy Vegemite. I see people like, "Oh, what's this Vegemite thing about?" And they get a whole scoop and they eat it like it's Nutella. That's a recipe for disaster. Don't do that. Just try a little bit on a piece of toast with some butter, and you'll have a much, much better first experience with Vegemite. It's not like Australians are sitting here riding around on kangaroos just swilling Vegemite from the jar. So I really like it, but I do like it in that context. An expression pedal to use with your axe effects. I use the Mission style, like the Crybaby style enclosure for mine because I like that feel of a Crybaby wah. But I do want to get one of the Fractal expression pedals because every time I play one of those on someone's rig, they're so nice and big and smooth, and I prefer those for a volume style thing. So in my opinion, if you want a traditional kind of wah expression, the Mission stuff's really good. Otherwise, the Fractal one's really good. Moog do a cheap expression pedal, which is super solid. I have a Roland EV pedal as well, which I use for some volume stuff, and that's pretty good. It's kind of hard to go wrong these days. There's so many good options. But yeah, to me, it comes down to, do you want it to feel like a wah, or do you want it to feel like a volume pedal? All right, I'm kind of smashing through this. Have I ever had a bad experience with an amplifier? Have I ever played like a real dud amp? I would probably say I've had a few poor experiences over the years, mostly using amps as backline amps. The first time I ever played a Marshall JVM was as a backline amp, and I just didn't get it at the time. I wanted it to work more like my Marshall DSL, and I didn't have the best time with that. I haven't revisited it sense. So I should really do that. The other one is just the old JCM 900 dual reverb. You know, those amps are the okayest Marshalls ever. I wouldn't say they're bad, but every time I've had one as a backline amp, it's been the okayest gig ever. That was kind of a large reason why I migrated to using the Axe effects, because I just got sick of these okay sounding amps as my backline amps. The other one that comes to mind, this one really was a dud, was we did this Rocklahoma pre-party one year, and it was a dime amp. I don't know, it was a solid state thing. It said dime on it. I don't know if that was like a dime bag thing or they were trying to, no idea, but that thing was, that was an experience to put it lightly. It was just like pre-party in the campgrounds that we were playing, and you know, I didn't worry too much about it because yeah, you know, I wasn't expecting a great tone at that gig, and that amp certainly didn't let me down in that regard. So yeah, otherwise, most of the time, you know, unless you get like an AC30 and you have to do a death metal gig, most of the time you can make most amps sound okay, in my opinion. I like P90s. Speaking of P90s, that white Les Paul Custom that you saw in the Eventide Black Hole demo, that has some TV Jones humbucker-sized P90s in it, and I will be doing a video on that guitar talking about those pickups at some point over the next fortnight or couple of weeks. So keep your eyes open for that. Speaking of which, you saw a demo on my channel for this thing, the Eventide Black Hole, awesome reverb pedal, and you probably saw just about everybody else that you follow on the internet do a similar thing. So I did a video earlier in the week or on the weekend just talking about a few things that I've noticed reviewing gear, and this question popped up directly from there, like with this, how does it work? Like what do I get told and what do I get told to do when demoing a new product that's just launching? I also saw that I know Strymon have a new pedal coming out, so I have nothing to do with Strymon. I really like their stuff. I've used it in the past, but I have no relationship with that company, so don't expect to see anything up on here. I'm sure you'll see a bunch of other channels on the day it comes out doing a video with it, because like I said in that video where I was talking about gear, as a pedal manufacturer, it makes so much sense to send these things out to as many different places as you can. If I was a pedal manufacturer, I wouldn't be putting advertising in guitar magazines. I'd be sending them to Pete Thorne and Fluff and Ola and, you know, all the best gear demo and gear channels in general. And with something like this, I've had this pedal for a month or two, and I did all the filming and things like that for it in advance, and I just had to be really careful that I didn't accidentally like put it in the background of one of my videos. That's kind of the only thing I was told not to do, which is kind of common sense. You don't want to leak something. I don't want to be responsible for ruining Eventide's product launch. But otherwise, you know, if someone comes to me and says, hey, we really want you to demo this thing, we'll send it to you, but you need to do this, 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 and this, I just kind of say, hey, maybe find someone else to do it. And I think most other YouTube channels that you see have a similar kind of attitude. If I want to demo something, I'm just going to do my thing, you know? It's like if you want to see fusion legato through your pedal, don't send it to me, send it to someone like Tom Quayle. Get them to do it, because that's his thing. My thing is a different thing. Ola England's thing is a different thing. Michael Nielsen's thing is a different thing. John Cordy's thing is a different thing. I think, you know, the best manufacturers out there, or the most savvy ones, have kind of cottoned onto that. So in terms of how it works, if I'm lucky enough, I get a thing, I don't charge any money for it, and then I'll do my thing, which is make a video exploring the tones with it. And if you all like it, then happy days. I guess that's just kind of how it works. If you don't like it, you can always just skip the video and, you know, carry on. No harm, no loss or anything like that. So that's how that works. This question brought back a lot of memories. Moving on, my opinion of Lee Aaron, which when the guys and I in the band first heard the song Metal Queen, we thought it was like the best thing ever. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I became aware of Lee Aaron, and I first saw her kind of glam stuff, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But then I heard that song, the whole like. Just an epic song. To me, that's the best song Dio never wrote. So that's probably one of my favorite kind of metal songs, metal anthems from that era. Her glam stuff is, it is what it is. I get why a lot of people like it, but I much prefer that earlier kind of Dio style stuff. It also reminds me there was a band called Soraya, which kind of had that AOR melodic rock thing going on as well, which was they had some cool stuff as well. It's really easy for me to, and obviously like the Fiona thing with Kip Winger as well. That was an interesting era, kind of in general with that sort of stuff. So yeah, I really like the song Metal Queen. That's to me one of my favorite metal anthems, and the rest of the stuff is fine. It's not my favorite thing. Moving right along, an ISO box for a cabinet. This question kind of arrived at a good time because I've actually been thinking of building an ISO box. The room that I normally have my cab in, I've pulled a bunch of stuff out of it and it's kind of in a state of flux at the moment, which is why you haven't been seeing as many kind of amp specific demos because I haven't had the cab set up there. But I think I'm going to try and make an ISO box at some point over the next couple of months. So if anyone has any tips or tricks or recommendations, let me know. It will probably be for a 412, so that I can just kind of stick it in there, close it, leave a 57 or a 906 in there, and as they say, Bob's your auntie. So that should be cool. I've never had an ISO box. I've never used one before. I imagine there's probably some kind of things you have to do to get it right, to cut down on resonances and things like that. But yeah, I would love to know any tips or tricks if you've got them for ISO boxes. And if I do make one, I will do a whole DIY build video to go along with that. That could probably be a pretty fun one as well. In general, just while I'm asking requests from the people watching this video, if there are ever any specific videos you want to see related to the Axe-Fx or amps or pedals or building rigs, do not be afraid to let me know. Like I said, I read nearly every comment, and when I see good suggestions like that, I do write them down on my long list of potential YouTube videos. So yeah, do not be afraid to ask me to do something like that. Hopefully I can get to it and fit it into the schedule. We've got time for a couple more questions. This one is going to be a technique related question. Sounds like the delivery truck just pulled up as well. I might have to come right back, but I might not have to, so I'll get onto this. The Paul Gilbert Racer X, funny little video that I did during the week. This question came up, and this is a good one. When I'm doing 3-note per string, the Paul Gilbert thing, which I spent so much time working on when I first heard Intense Rock, it literally changed my life. So I've been playing those licks. Oh man, that was not going down easy. He's suffocating on his Q&A. What was I talking about? Yeah, the 3-note per string thing. It's just strict alternate picking starting with a downstroke. And if you don't already, practice this lick. This volume control's backwards. The one that Paul does, lick number 1 on Intense Rock number 1. That's the lick that just really taught me how to pick, and all that kind of 3-note per string stuff. I just do strict alternate picking. However, if I'm doing something like the Eric Johnson 5 stuff, in that case, I will use economy picking. If I'm doing a hybrid picking lick, like something like, in general, anytime I get some hammer-ons and pull-offs going on, I'm probably going to be using a little bit of economy picking or a little bit of hybrid picking. And I'm just trying to think of an example where I wouldn't be doing that. But yeah, all the other just like picked stuff, or the half-half stuff, if you've been keeping up with my 5-minute licks series, is pretty much strict alternate picking, starting with the downstroke, trying to do the downward pick slant thing, because that's basically the best way to play those licks. Paul had it figured out in the 80s. Troy Grady has expanded all of that with his cracking the code thing. And if you haven't watched Intense Rock by Paul Gilbert, or you haven't watched any of the cracking the code videos, and you want to be a really excellent alternate picker, do both of those things and then practice and practice, and you will become an excellent alternate picker. All right, we are pretty much at the end. I've talked about just about everything I wanted to talk about. We talked about the 2012 tour. The electronics in my Les Paul Artist. So that's the thing that you saw a couple of weeks ago or last week on the channel with the gigantic kind of carve in the back there. From what I understand, it had a whole circuit in there of like Moog electronics with like a compander circuit and some other active EQ, like had a bass and a treble control rather than a tone control. And yeah, I just pulled all of that out, and now it has a traditional Les Paul style wiring. But I think there are some resources out there where you can see what Gibson originally had in there. I've thought about resurrecting the circuit, but then it's like, you could probably get a chip about that big and have 10 times as much stuff on there than one of those. So yeah, it's a little bit of a pointless exercise in that case. All right. I think we're at the end of today's Q&A. Thanks so much for putting up with all my rambling. There will be another Q&A next week. If you have questions you would like me to answer for that particular Q&A, let me know in the comments. In the meantime, have a great weekend. I'll see you then.